Survivor's ready. Go!
Travis spoken.
Boston Rob and Amber are gonna do it.
This is a business trip, as I like to say.
You Brad Culpepper.
I'm tired of you and the fucking chicken.
You can call me the puppet master. They can be my little puppets.
It's not like you make me deal with the devil here.
You get to milk your own milk, I guess.
We got enough rocks here, too. We could build a pretty decent shelter just using rocks.
I'm supposed to talk loud.
Direct from Hobart, it's time for the only Survivor podcast in Australia dedicated to Survivor. Bring you today's interviews, episodes, and opinions from the greatest reality show on the planet. It's Survivor Oz, and here's your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Survivor Oz, the Ozlet episode. I'm your host, Anthony Rossi. I'm back for a good episode of Survivor, another delicious blindside. And we have three people here to recap this episode. We have all the way from Birthday Land, Fairyland, Kristen Knar. Welcome back.
Yo.
Good to have your insightful commentary once again.
Always.
Back from the place that Jenny visited from this season, we have Alec.
That is like, she didn't visit there, she lived there. But she kind of lives in Salt Lake. But yeah. Hi. Doing well.
I was close enough, so. And back from his nap, we have Jared once again.
Thank you. It's good to be awake.
Well, I'm glad you're awake. Otherwise, your commentary would be pretty off. All right, well, we'll just get started with this episode. We had a very interesting start to this one, considering the preview literally directly started the episode, essentially, where they didn't really do a cut. They kind of just started us right in. And we have the brains talking about being on the outs. At this stage, I'm going to jump to you, Kristen, first. At this stage, did you think any of the brains had a shot of making it further in the game?
Yeah, because they were making such a big deal of them going home. So obviously that wasn't going to happen.
Okay. How about you, Alec? Same question.
No, none of the brains. At this point, none of the brains are going to be going. Like, it seemed like they were if they went to Tribal that night, but because Neil left, they had, it's like none of them were going to go home.
Okay, then I'm the only one. Like, I thought they were going to be done. Like, I thought that Debbie was gone next, and maybe after that something would happen. What about you, Jared?
Yeah, I thought that we were at a point in the season where potentially things could have gone downhill and been a bit more straightforward. So I'd agree with you. I thought that definitely Debbie was like a huge target for this vote, and everybody seemed keen to get rid of her.
I mean, we saw a lot of Debbie being this quote-unquote aggressive player, but then it kind of backfired on her. So, I don't know. I guess I'm not reading into the edit as well as you, Kristen, and Alec are, I guess. But I guess one of the main talking points, I know it's later in the episode, but I guess one of the main talking points we should hit on is the idea of the split between the guys and the girls and that kind of dominating the strategic talk this week. Nick, Scott, and Jason were very suspicious of this girls' alliance, and Sydney kind of sourced it out. So I guess my question would be for this is Sydney jumping too early, or is she just playing it right and kind of trying to see the situation go? Kristen?
It's kind of tough to tell because obviously we don't know what happened. She could be voted out next week, but I wasn't really sure about how good her move was or if it was too soon, but at least according to Nick, the plan was to blindside Sydney the next week at 9. So if that actually was the plan of the beauties, then it was a good idea, I suppose.
Did you hear that in an interview or something?
Yeah, that was in Nick's exit interview. He talked about they kind of wanted to play both sides because Brains and Braun could not work together no matter what, unless it's Sydney, I guess, because she has some sort of social I don't know, she is not Jason or Scott, so she can actually function. So they can't get along at all. So the beauties kind of wanted to play both sides and not let either side get too strong. So they were they wanted to take out Neil, and then they wanted to take out Sydney. So I can't really say it was like a terrible move because she may have been out this next week anyway.
Fair enough, fair enough. What do you think, Alec? Was it too premature? Did she just pounce too early, and did she do it the right way, kind of blowing up at camp?
I feel like I watched the Rob Has a Podcast one, and like Steven and Rob talk about it. Rob thought it was a bad move, and Steven thought it was a good move. I'm with Steven on this one. I thought it was a great move by Sydney because basically from her perspective, she's been with Scott and Jason like the whole game, and then all of a sudden this Nick guy comes along and is like the new number 3, the new Sydney in that threesome, and so like her wanting to take him out made sense. So then it improves her spot with her original alliance, whereas like it was like Nick was kind of squeezing into her original spot, and like in the interview, which I haven't listened to, but with them even talking about getting rid of Sydney, it kind of makes just kind of adds on to the fact that Sydney, I believe, made a pretty good move.
I'm going to jump to you, Jared, next. Same question, pretty much. Just answer.
I thought it was a good move. I think by kind of flipping the vote on Nick, Sydney, she sets herself up well as a swing between like lots of the groups. I think there's still potential for her to go back to Scott and Jason. I think she's kind of the swing between the beauty girls and the brain girls, and I think it's always a positive in like a 3-tribe season to try to sort of keep those original tribes as level as possible. So getting rid of a beauty and tying things up at 3-3-3 between the original tribes, I think benefits kind of everyone.
Well, now I'm wondering, because Sydney kind of is that bridge between the groups a bit. She kind of acts as that middle figure. Do you see her then now being someone to be targeted because she is in the middle? She's not really full on with one group. I mean, she is 100% with probably Jason and Scott, but at the end of the day, she can do whatever she wants, and we saw that this episode. So, Kristen, what are your thoughts on Sydney kind of being targeted now because she's in the middle?
I think it's going to depend on how she plays it coming back. Like, we don't know what her plans are. Sometimes people flip and they flip for good, and sometimes people flip and then they kind of go back. Like, I think it was maybe on the Know-It-Alls that they compared it to Tony flipping on LJ, but then continuing to stick with that alliance. So it's kind of going to depend, I think, on how she can handle the 3 groups, because I think we saw Storm come out a little bit, and Storm is not probably the best social player of Survivor, but Sydney is. So I think it can go any way, and it's going to be up to her whether she gets targeted or not.
Yeah, jumping to you, Alec. Can Sydney bounce back? Is she safe?
I think Sydney's in the best position in the game after this move, because now that there's 5 girls and four guys or whatever, if the women want to stick together, she's there with that. But the thing is, the guys need that 5th vote, and the closest relationship you have between the guys and the girls now is like Scott and Jason's connection with Sydney. So I don't think Sydney will be voted out next, maybe a couple episodes later for all I know, but she's gonna be like that swing vote. Like, she can choose whichever side she wants to go on now. And so I feel it emphasized her game compared to being the outs of a 7-person alliance, and now she's in the middle of 2 possible 5-people alliances.
We have seen Sydney kind of try and play all sides of the thing early, especially in early Braun days when Alicia was still around. She was still trying to work with her and getting people to trust her. So I'm guessing she does have room. Jared, what are your thoughts? Is she safe?
Yeah, I agree that she's kind of in a good position and is probably safe for a couple of weeks. I think the key thing when you're kind of playing that middle ground is to not, I suppose, seem wishy-washy. And I don't see kind of Sydney sitting on the fence. I think she'll kind of make a decision quickly, commit to a group, whether that's for a couple of votes or just the one. I don't think she's going to be seen as kind of flitting between all these alliances and not kind of making up her mind to the last second. I think she's played it well before, and I think she'll continue to just make a decision on on that kind of cycle and stick with that group for that point in time.
So I think we can briefly touch on this immunity challenge. It kind of goes back to the San Juan del Sur challenge that caused a lot of funny moments in that. What was your thoughts on the temptation? Because that was something very interesting that really probably set Sydney's plan in motion, that temptation, kind of seeing the cockiness of everyone. Kristen, thoughts on the challenge?
I mean, it's kind of like the same thing as the, like, pick which rock you want, whether you're going to eat or play, but instead they made it a little bit more, like, obvious where they actually had them all start the challenge and then they can immediately quit. So, I don't know, I kind of liked that they did that, but I'm more concerned about Ty completely exposing himself as a competitor when he had no reason to.
So, I guess we're looking at performance now, too, because Sydney and Ty both went to compete. I guess some others didn't get tempted, but it's because Nick didn't get tempted, but he quit as soon as Aubrey was out. So, Alec, what do you think about the way Ty's performance along with the whole challenge in general?
I feel the whole temptation aspect, I thought it was interesting that he was just like, I'm going to beat out this whole buffet at once and everybody who wants it can jump off. Because normally with a challenge like that, you have people who are maybe even possibly just waiting on longer just to get a better food, I guess you could say. And like this way, it's kind of sped up the challenge. So it's like 5 minutes in, you lost half of the people. Like one you lost because you couldn't stay on, but then you lost 4 more to this temptation. And, you know, so I thought that was very interesting because it did expose it a little bit, like Kristen said. Not that the Brains needed any more knowledge that they were on the outs. But as far as Ty's performance, I don't think it really puts him as a competitor. Like last week, he was like in the final three of the immunity challenge, and nobody's like, oh, Ty's a competitor. He's somebody to be watched out for. It's like Ty is just somebody who wants to prove to himself that he can do well. My dad even compares him to Yao Man from Fiji. It's just like he's the smaller guy that everybody underestimates, including possibly like, you know, his own self-conscious could underestimate himself. And so he just wants to prove himself wrong. And so I feel that's kind of what he was doing in the challenge. Like he didn't need it, neither did Sydney. And like he was just trying to see how long he could go, and he just ended up outlasting Sydney. So I don't think it saw him as a threat because, you know, for all you know, Nick could have been on there the whole time as well. Like, but Nick just decided to get off, and Ty was just like, I'm mentally stronger than that, you know? So I feel it was more of a mental power more than a physical, like becoming a physical threat.
Well, that comes into play later on, I guess, during the season when there are a lot of challenges that are kind of a test of will. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the times, I mean, people always complain about Parvati winning the challenges where you just have to stand still, but those come in quite often. And if this happens again, like, going to be a target. Jared, what about you? What do you think?
I think Ty kind of gets away with it a bit just because of his stature and how he looks. I think while you have people like a Scott around or even Sydney around, I suppose they just look physical, and I think that's something that people tend to target more, and maybe even though Ty's kind of done well in a couple of challenges, people look at him and like, oh, it's just Ty, like we can beat him in this or that type of thing. I thought it was interesting, his whole like speech throughout the challenge about like being like bamboo that's flexible and able to kind of like move and stuff, and whether that was purely just for the sake of the challenge and what he said there, or if that's going to sort of come more into the season of him being able to sort of adapt to kind of being on the outs and changing things up.
So one of the things that is starting to become very apparent in the season and very important in everyone's mind is this idea of the winner's edit and who can win and who has a shot, because everyone, if that's a part of the Survivor Oz team, has totally different opinions, evident by the power rankings and the Oz top scene stuff. And I know, Kristen, I've seen some tweets from you about who has a shot and who is completely out of it.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. All right, who has a shot, Kristen? Who do you think has a shot to win?
I think that it's going to be a female that is not Julia. So that takes out 5 people, in my opinion. I don't have any reason other than Jeff hates the season, and it just feels like a woman's going to win because there's no straightforward, dominant male winner's edit.
So there's no shot for people who've had strong edits like Scott or Jason?
Not to me. I think 0%, but I could be wrong.
No tie underdog story?
Nope.
Alec, what do you think? Do the women have a shot?
I definitely agree with Kristen to an extent because I feel the women have been portrayed more positively on this season. I wouldn't rule out Jason. I would probably say has the second least amount of chance of the guys left besides Joe. I feel Joe has like the least amount of percent of all the guys, and Jason, he's just been portrayed as like this bully. He was my preseason winners pick, so I'm hoping he does win. But like he's kind of been portrayed more of a kind of mean and snarky. Scott, I feel, has a better chance to win than most of the people are giving him credit for because he's had flashes of brilliance and then he's had lows. And sometimes there's the winner that gets that. Of course, they're going to patronize him because he's an NBA player and so like a former NBA player, and so he's supposedly filthy rich. I thought this was a better episode than Scott than last week, and so I feel that's a big plus for him. As far as the winners, basically all 4 of the girls all 5 of the girls besides Julia, so like Sydney, Debbie, Aubrey, and Michelle are definitely big contenders. I would probably say Ty, out of those 4 and Ty, I would probably say have the best chance of winning. But Ty's kind of getting a downward spiral edit, so I don't know. I would probably say Debbie probably is the one getting the best one at the moment. Debbie or Aubrey, which is weird because they were the 2 that were supposed to leave this episode. But who knows? Michelle is the one that everybody else says, but I don't see it.
Kristen, I know I just went to you, but Kristen, give me if you had to say definitively this person, who would you say? If you had to pick one, just pick one. And
I'm so torn. I can't. Don't make me do it.
All right.
I think I would say I think I would say Aubrey for no reason.
Okay. You said something, so I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Comes with age.
You're now 5.
When you're older and wiser too.
Hey, let her live. She's 5 years old now.
I'm 5.
She has a wand.
I do. I'm playing with it right now.
She's old enough to go to Hogwarts.
I don't understand that reference. Anyway.
I think it's interesting that everyone's putting Jason out of it because I think Jason has the best shot of any of the guys. Because
they all have a 0% chance, so having the best shot means nothing.
I just think that Jason's edit has been portrayed more negatively, but he's kind of like Scott. He's had good ones, but Scott has showed brilliance. Scott's the one that's close to Ty. Jason's not. Jason's closest ally in the game just turned against him. Besides Scott, Sydney. It's he was close to Sydney and he was close with Scott, and Scott's still with him, but Sydney turned against him, and it's he's just never. I feel he has a great shot, but that's not saying much with a season of just super cocky guys and Joe, who just isn't there.
But I think a lot of the negative edit comes down to the early Braun days. We've seen a lot of positive things about Jason in general.
Did you see the preview?
I don't watch previews.
Well, that early days is coming back.
All right. Well, we'll see. But I think
0% chance.
Okay. Thank you,
when
Spencer.
He wins, Kristen will be biting those words.
He's a terrible player, and he's an ass. It's not going to happen.
He has an idol.
So did Neil.
I know.
That worked out well.
I'm just trying to justify
0% chance.
All right, Jared, just weigh in. I need Krista to be quiet now.
It's my birthday. I can do what I want.
I don't know. I think we're headed towards a final where the more social player wins. I just get that feeling about this season is it's just going to come down to relationships. And I think that you may have like a guy like Scott or Jason there in the final, but they just kind of get blasted for the way that they treated other people. And maybe even somebody more quiet like a Michelle sort of comes through and wins the thing. I think with Michelle, she's given like a lot of airtime and confessionals that are pointless in a way. Like they don't add much to the story, and to me that kind of feels like, why is she getting this screen time when she's not saying anything new? It feels like the editors are just kind of throwing her a bone, maybe because she does get to the end and sort of takes it all out. I think with Jason and Scott, you do get some positive moments. I think this last episode, they both had kind of those moments talking about their family and stuff, and the reason that they're out competing in the game is for their family, which was to paint them in a bit more of a positive light. But I do think the negatives outweigh the positives when it comes to those two.
Yeah, well, I still think that Jason out of the guys has the best shot, even though I don't think a guy is going to win. I do agree with you, Kristen. I don't think a guy's going to win this season. But I do think Jason has the best shot out of all the guys. I think all of the other ones have kind of burned too many bridges where I think he stands up better. Because all the people he burned bridges with are gone.
I feel like the people left like Scott better than they like Jason. They almost voted Jason out this week. They didn't show it on TV, but that's apparently what happened.
That's probably where Ty's vote came from.
Yeah, he thought that they were still staying with Jason, but they ended up flipping it to Nick.
I feel it was Jason's kind of, I think, can't remember who gave the confessional about it. It might have been like Sydney or something. Gave a confessional when Jason was telling the story about his autistic son and stuff. Or daughter. It was his autistic daughter, I want to say. I can't remember. And like everybody's just like, oh, he's a sympathy vote. And then on top of it, it's like Jason isn't a bad player of this game. He's not a great player, but he's not like a bad player. So he's in the decent player mode, at least up to this point.
Can we wait until next week to make that call?
That's a good point.
Okay.
But and so like you know, him, I think they talked about him having the sympathy vote when he makes it to the end, and so getting him out plus the sympathy vote, like getting a decent strategic player and the sympathy vote out, that's probably the reason why they went with Jason over Scott. Plus, I feel they think they can drag Scott to the end because, well, he's wealthy, so why give him the money? So I feel that's the reason why Scott has a better chance to win, just because people will probably take Scott to the end just because they know they can beat the NBA player.
Fair enough. I still disagree, but fair enough.
You're wrong, so it's okay.
Well, I didn't ask for that opinion, Kristen, so that was unwelcomed.
Watch it be a Sydney, Jason, and Scott final three, and Sydney's gonna win.
I'd be okay with that. She's my pony.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not out early this time, Kristen.
This is the furthest I've ever gone. My last furthest was Julie McGee. So I had very low standards.
Who have you had so far? Sorry to break this.
Julie, Nina, and PG.
Oh, good choices.
Yeah.
I had Alec from San Juan del Sur, then Vince from Worlds Apart, then Terry in Cambodia, and now I've got Jason.
Okay, so yours is at least still in. I had Wentworth last season, so I was pretty close with that one. But then I had Anna this season, which should have made it to the merge at least.
So Kristen, Jared, and I are still in for money at this point.
I'm not.
Yeah, you're out because
I'm out. I'd rather lose it pre-merge compared to like losing it at the Final Four. So I know that sounds bad, but
yeah, it's. I mean, people also often do the "would you rather like go out really early or go out just before" kind of thing. So it makes sense.
Uh-huh.
I've had the greatest success out of any of you because I had Natalie Anderson my first season in the pony.
That's definitely a lot more success than any of us.
And then I went out and then I had 2 pre-merge after that. So I'm so happy that Michelle's sticking into this because I need her to win. Anyway, episode. What we're here to talk about. Anyway, this season.
Have I ever snorted on the mic before?
No,
Now you have. So this early in the season, we all were talking about how it was less focused on the strategy and more focused on the kind of surviving in the elements and kind of the social. And this season, in this episode, we saw both Jason and Scott talking about their family and kind of talking about why they're playing. Do we think that's still going to hold true? Because we did have a bit of strategy, a lot of strategy in the last few episodes. Do we think that emphasis on the strategy is going to continue forward, or we're going to keep getting the mix and the blending? Kristen?
I don't know what you just asked.
All right, Alec?
I feel we'll definitely still get the mix. Like I enjoy I call them the mini character moments, where like, you know, we actually get some development to a survivor. You know, past seasons we've just gotten straight strategy talk. This season, early on, we got just straight character moments, like just funny camp moments with like Ty and Caleb and stuff. And like now here we are into the merge where like normally it's like 100% strategy based, and we had great like character moments, like things that took us back. Like we had Jason talking about his autistic child, and we had Scott talking about his growing up in Utah. Woot woot. And so it was very. Sorry, I have to do that shout out. Okay, I was surprised when he said he was from Utah. I did not know that beforehand, but and so I think it will continue to be a mix, because even last episode we still had a couple of those moments. Last episode I feel was a little bit strategy heavy, but we still had a couple of the moments. And then this episode we still had a lot of strategy talk, but we did have a few more of those character moments. So I feel it will continue to be this way, because we've always had them. Even in a super strategy based episode, we still had a couple here and there, like just developing them as a person more than them as a survivor player.
Jared, same thing that Kristen didn't understand?
I think we'll continue to get character moments. I mean, we just lost two of the biggest, I suppose, game bots in Neil and Nick, who weren't providing heaps of character moments. So I think that given the people left, I mean, you've got Debbie, who was just doing random stretching or like yoga ballet type thing before the challenge for no reason, and they still showed it. So I think with players like that around, you're just going to keep getting character moments, which is good, because you want that to kind of go alongside the strategy so it doesn't become too strategy heavy.
So with the evacuation of Neil last episode, we are now at 2 medical evacuations. This season was touted as the most intense in the fact that it's most strenuous on the contestants. A, are we going to see someone go? And B, who is it going to be? Kristen?
I'm pretty sure that somewhere it may have been mentioned that 3 people get medevaced, but I could be making that up. And I have no idea.
Well, the fact that I bring it up because...
I hope it's Jason. And I hope... No, I'm not going to say that. Because I can get arrested for that.
Well, at this point in this show, the most we've had in a season is 2. And so considering he hyped it as the season with the most intense kind of conditions, my mind is that there is at least 3 evacuations. So I'm expecting at least 1 more. I don't know about you, Alec. What do you think?
I've heard 3, no matter what. I've also heard that they were like 2 in the game, 1 after they left the game. Like we know that Liz had to be medically evacuated after she was voted out.
So was Peter.
Oh, Peter was too?
Mm-hmm. He got sent home for surgery.
I did not know that. Well, there's 4 now, but but then I had also heard that there was 2 post game and then 1 in the game, but then there was 2 in the game. So there's most likely a 3rd one in the game, and the only one that they've even hinted at is probably Aubrey, just because her infection was so bad that she even had to get antibiotics for it. And so if that one were to get worse, then it'd be her. The only other one that I could even think of it being possibly is Joe, just because he's had the like couple moments where like he had a cut on his finger that Peter was looking at. He like cut himself on a challenge, but like there hasn't been any foreshadowing of a Joe evacuation. But then again, there wasn't any for Caleb before either.
Well,
there was for Neil, at least during the episode. But
Well, I was going to bring that up because you said Aubrey, but she got the medicine. And we never saw anything about Caleb going. Caleb just kind of came out of the blue, overheated.
Aubrey's first confessional in the whole season was about her panic attack and dehydration as well, which I thought was also very interesting. That was like all the airtime she got in the first episode. So I thought she was going to be one that got medically evacuated. Like, Scott's infection wasn't that bad. Ty's was perfectly okay. But Aubrey's was bad enough that they contemplated it and gave her antibiotics instead. So that's the only reason why I would think Aubrey. I don't think it would be her. She's the only one that we've actually had the possibility of being told that could be evacuated, kind of.
Haven't we, seen everyone, though, kind of have, some sort of medical something, except, two of the girls?
Yeah, Sydney and Michelle have been pretty clean so far.
No, Sydney almost died.
Oh, shit.
So, Sydney and Debbie and Peter and Scott and Ty, they've all been shown with something. So, I don't think we can really go off of that.
I think the cleanest we've had is Michelle, but the second cleanest is Jason, who just got sunburnt.
What about Julia?
Well, she was on her own.
Been clean, but when she was on her own, she talked about how much of a struggle it was. She wasn't feeling well, stuff like that. She just had one of those random confessionals when she was all alone.
One of her 3 confessionals.
She's had 7, okay?
I love Julia. I love her. It's okay.
Jared.
What are we talking about?
Okay. The evacuation. Jared, go.
I feel like there is more to come. I think going off what you said about it being kind of the most physical season ever, I think it just makes sense that there would be more than there's ever been before. I think I've also read bits and pieces about there potentially being 3. In my mind, I think Joe is a potential bet just because we've seen kind of glimpses of him kind of getting his finger stitched up, and he just doesn't get any screen time at all, really. I mean, that's the same for a couple of people, but I feel like it's potential that maybe he goes out late game, similar to like Eric in Karamoan, and the editors just don't want you to be attached to somebody who goes out kind of that late and close to the final. I mean, if he goes out potentially in the finale, you don't want to lose that momentum of losing somebody who could potentially win the game. So I think that his edit kind of suggests that he could be a medevac.
I mean, also at the same time, it could be Julia because she hasn't been shown that much either.
Exactly.
I mean, but at the end of the day, it's really hard to tell because it could be, if it was something like Sydney who gets hurt in a challenge, she could have the huge momentum of being a real strategic player, and then all of a sudden the game pulls her out because it's too intense or something goes wrong.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to edit a really big strategic character or something as not much just because they get pulled and we don't want to feel bad about it. So I still think it could be anyone, but I mean, Joe makes the most sense, but I wouldn't say that anyone is safe from it.
I mean, if anything, we've seen this season, it's been too intense. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel Joe is just that red herring, though, because even the contestants have talked about him being most likely to be medevaced, and I feel that's just them throwing a curveball at us. And so that's why I was saying somebody like an Aubrey, who has been built up as this good strategic player at some points, could be it, just because we've had some inkling of her possibly having a medical problem. So I don't know who it is. At this point, I don't really care who it is. That sounds bad. I care who it is. I'm just saying, whoever it is, if it's a big strategic character like a Debbie that got medically evacuated, holy cow, that would be the biggest curveball ever.
But if it's Jason, the world rejoices.
Could be a Jason following now. But yeah, I would say if it's a Joe or a Julia, it wouldn't add anything onto this season because it's kind of just because Neil going up into the episode he got medically evacuated had such a minimal edit that him being medically evacuated wasn't the biggest shock, I guess you could say. Caleb being medically evacuated kind of was, except I had read stuff that was going to happen. But because he had, outside of Ty, he was by far the most edited on the beauty drive, and so it's just a Joe and a Julia wouldn't it be a big shock? But like Aubrey or Debbie or Sydney or Jason or Scott, Michelle, like any of those would be a shock.
We figured out that Nick was going to
Really?
go home because of Sydney's plan, and Ty ruined it. Kristen, say something about the freaking tribal council / Nick's cockiness. Go.
I'm pretty sure that a lot of that was put on. I know I've talked to somebody from another podcast about this, that it's like hard to appreciate the like cockiness of Nick getting voted out because he's putting on so much of that. Like he's clearly an arrogant person. Anyway, one of the co-hosts of the Purple Rock podcast, name dropping them, we are a big fan of like the douchey bros on the show because they make good TV and it's fun to watch their downfall. But like Nick is as unself-aware as they made him seem on the show. I think he does have some level of self-awareness. He seemed to have a really good like attitude about everything. It was like, yup, they got me. Like that was a good time. He wasn't like Neil, who was like doing the rowing machine for 16 hours because he's coming back next season apparently. And so I don't know. It was hard to take it like as like a Drew Christie kind of boot or even a Peter kind of boot because I think he's a lot smarter and more self-aware than they really showed because he puts on such an arrogant character. Like he even said, I know I'm being arrogant. Like he knows what he's doing and he's playing it up and I don't know. I kind of liked him.
See, that's my thing. I usually am against those cocky players that are really like, well, obviously this is how it's going to happen because I'm in control or something like that. And honestly, Nick didn't bother me at all. I was enjoying Nick the entire time. Like I never found, with the exception of maybe when he was talking to Michelle that one time pre-merge, but honestly, Nick hadn't bothered me because during the episode, I was more shocked at the fact that it was Nick than the fact that it wasn't Jason because I felt that Jason was far more like out there about being cocky and everything. I felt like Nick had a little bit of control. Alec, what are your thoughts on Nick and his blind side or not blind side?
Is Alex portrayed to us blind side? I remember after the premiere, I got asked like who my least favorite character like player was, and I said Nick because he was very monotone in his confessionals, at least in the first episode. He definitely grew on me just as a character to watch on TV. Like, I knew he was never going to win. He wasn't going to be the greatest player. I think he was very game savvy, but he kind of overplayed his card. I feel the one moment that got to me about Nick that really proved that him being cocky wasn't just an act, like it kind of was him. Definitely feel he's a good guy and stuff, but like was him talking to Aubrey. That scene alone, because like him at the challenge, okay, even Ty was cocky at the challenge and stuff like that. That one part didn't bother me, but then he's talking to Aubrey and he's like, "Yeah, we're splitting the votes between you and Debbie, and well, I think that you should vote for Debbie because I said so." Like that's literally like word for word what happened. Just like you either vote for Debbie or Joe. Debbie's probably the better choice because, well, I say so. She's going home anyways. It's like that conversation was the one that really like tipped me over the edge of like, this is more than like, this is a cocky person and stuff. And I feel the edit really portrayed that throughout. I know last episode he had like such a great edit where it's like he was playing both sides, but then this edit, maybe it was Scott and Jason rubbing off on him more, like really portrayed him as being cocky. And like, I feel that's kind of the reason why he didn't see it as much of a blindside is because he knew he was probably going to get votes out of that tribal council because he was kind of being a jerk to everybody. And like, I feel he was kind of playing it up a little bit more because he thought, oh, if I'm a jerk, you know, it worked for Philip. Like Philip was a jerk and people took him to the end. So I think that's what he was trying to do. And like, he would have actually did what Philip didn't do and actually like, you know, said this is my strategy. But But yeah, that conversation with Aubrey was the total one that like tipped me over the edge of like, man, he's way over the top cocky about this. Because before that, he was just, confident. Then he was super cocky to even try to like basically demand Aubrey to vote for Debbie in a way.
True, I see.
Can I talk about that for a second quick?
Kristen, you may go right ahead.
Thank you. He talked about that in his exit interview with Rob, saying that he wanted to work. He like actually wanted to work with Aubrey and didn't want to work with Debbie because she was so like obvious about like wanting to work with him. So that's why he went to Aubrey and kind of was like trying to almost save her, but her reaction was like nothing. And at that point, he recognized that she didn't take to it at all, but that it was because she already had planned to, like, the plan was already to blindside Nick, and he didn't know that was why she wasn't responding to it. So, and again, I just want to backtrack to something else too, because I know Alec was saying a little bit about why he thought he might be a target, but apparently Michelle literally was like, yo, you are a target tonight. But then she ended up voting for him. So I don't really understand how, like, I don't know why Michelle would do that. Like, I don't know why she would, and that wasn't shown. So he knew he was a target. He thought that it was Jason and Scott flipping, not Michelle herself, because why the hell would she tell him? And then thought he corrected the problem by talking to Scott and Jason, but then it was really the girls that flipped. So I don't know. There's just a whole like mindfuck of stuff that doesn't make sense that we didn't really see. So I don't think we can put like anything together from this Nick thing.
I'm not saying he's a cocky guy, but that scene just made it seem like...
No, for sure.
Yeah, but I feel... So maybe him talking to Aubrey was like his last-ditch effort to save himself, but it just wasn't portrayed that way.
Yeah.
Because like maybe if he was like, oh, if I can get Aubrey to vote with us, then maybe we can still get rid of Debbie. And so maybe that was probably what it was. It's like he found out that Scott and Jason were the ones flipping, and it was, Sydney, and so just that extra vote for Debbie just to make sure he stayed. So I feel that's what it was, actually, but like it was just portrayed as him being super arrogant and like kind of demeaning Aubrey, kind of like his conversation with Michelle earlier in the season that Rossi mentioned. So
I mean, it could have come down to the fact that Michelle was trying to play him as a jury member, and the fact that she's like, I told you that you were a target, and you were trying to keep in good with him just in case she were to make it to the end. Because I could see Michelle trying to talk to him as a jury player now and saying, I was with you the whole time.
Yeah, that's totally a great possibility.
Because I see Michelle as someone who, like, along with Sydney, I think Michelle, Sydney, and Aubrey, the three people who I see as kind of thinking the most ahead right now in terms of who's going to be at the end, who am I going to be with, and who's going to be on the jury. And so I guess that's what it comes down to. I don't know why they wouldn't show it, maybe because something about Michelle later on comes into play is what I'm thinking of, is that she has some other strategic move or something that kind of sets the tone of her game.
Well, I was thinking that maybe they like didn't want... I have like a weird conspiracy theory that could go either way on Michelle, that they haven't been like showing a lot of the negative stuff about her, like that she was actually the #1 target on Beauty, even though they showed it to us as the three girls being strong, and then she was the #1 target on the Swap Tribe, but they never went to Tribal, and now they didn't show her telling Nick about the plan. So that could either be she was just completely irrelevant, or it could be they're trying not to show the bad side of her. So it's like, I guess we'll find out once we see how this plays out. But she could just be a completely irrelevant player. But to me, it's almost like that Natalie thing where we heard Natalie Anderson like apparently went on like a rampage for like 20 minutes against John Rocker, but we never saw that because they were trying to show her slightly nicer.
I mean, do you think of it as she's going to the end kind of thing? We don't see this kind of stuff, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying it's either that or it's just it was irrelevant. Like I was thinking maybe it's to make her look better. Like they didn't want to show her that she was the number one target on both tribes she's been on up until the merge. But there's also obviously that potential that it's just like the Julia edit where we have no idea what the hell she's doing. So I hope it's the former though, because I'm a big Michelle fan.
It might be because, like, to bake off Kristen's point, why they didn't show her trying to talk with Nick is like because Nick was going to be a jury member, and if Michelle doesn't make it to the end, then there was no point behind that. Like, you know, back when Albert in the coach season, the South Pacific, when he made it to the end, they showed him trying to make good connections with the old Savaii tribe. The old Savaii tribe, because he did make it to the end, even though that worked against him. And so if Michelle doesn't make it to the end, then it was kind of irrelevant to even include that. But if she does make it to the end, then it would have been relevant to kind of include that. Or maybe he'll bring it up or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Jared, we haven't heard from you in a bit. What are your thoughts on Nick as we go off this mid-season on Michelle?
I didn't mind Nick. I think similar to what's already been said, you could clearly tell that he was playing up his character a bit. And I mean, that might have started like as far back as casting, and that probably helped him get into the show to kind of play up that arrogance and narcissism in a way. But yeah, I thought he was fairly likable in amongst that. It's interesting to me, like the way the vote went down, just because it did sort of become apparent that Nick would be getting votes and that he'd probably be the one going home. But for me, I thought that maybe even the beauty girls wouldn't flip and it would just be Sydney and the Brains kind of using those 4 votes to take him out and playing off the split vote to get the majority. But yeah, I'm kind of sad to see him go because, I mean, you could classify him as a villain, but he was a likable villain in a way. So it's upsetting to lose that person who you're not necessarily rooting against, but you're not necessarily rooting for either. And they just kind of sit in the middle and they're just a fun character to watch.
I 100% agree with that. That's how I kind of felt the entire season with Nick. We either didn't see him or he was really cocky, but not too cocky. I don't know. At the end of the day, I think that Jason's been the really cocky one, which really contradicts my opinion that he's going to be the most winning guy at this point. I don't know what I'm thinking.
I think Jason has been the most naturally confident, naturally cocky one. Nick was kind of a more controlled cocky one. And I feel the edit kind of made it seem like he was more of the out-of-control cocky one, and Scott's more of the controlled cocky one, but I feel it was kind of the other way around between those two.
Do you think it comes down to the fact that Nick probably knows himself better, or...
He knows his character better.
Mm-hmm. And the game,
so
I think.
It's more... So is Nick a fan? I don't know. I don't remember preseason stuff.
Yeah, he was a fan.
Nick worked for Rob as a podcast for a season.
Oh, okay. Well, so Nick is a fan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that probably comes down to Jason was recruited and Nick was a fan. So I guess, are there any other topics that we should discuss?
Blunder.
Ty, yes. All right. Thoughts on Ty's tribal council flop, which I think culminated in the fact that confirmed Julia and Michelle flipping. Kristen, what are your thoughts on Ty's stupid confessional, I guess?
I'm so confused at what Ty is doing. He's talking so much, like at the challenge. He didn't need to say that the brain was going home. He didn't need to bring up the idol and then completely backtrack. Like, that was the best part of the whole thing was, oh, well, somebody just might have been like messing with me or something. I don't know. But like, I'm hoping that like they could have just shown it because it was interesting TV. But like, I have to hope, because I hate Jason so much, that it like pisses them off and they like try to like bully Ty into like helping them out with his idol, and it doesn't work because Ty's not easily bullied into things, and that they don't end up combining. That's actually something I wanted to talk about. I don't know if we can get into that quick after this. Just if you, at this point, we're down to final 9, if we think that those idols are going to combine or if there's going to be another idol. But I think it's really interesting that they're not Jason, and they were showing Jason, Scott, and Ty as like I was just gonna say a threesome. as like the main alliance there with Sydney out of it. And Ty voted for Jason, and he's just he can't stop talking. So I'm very curious to see. Like, I feel like Jason can't handle that. Like, I feel like he's gonna lose his shit. I mean, we see a little bit of that in the previews, but again, I don't know if you're not watching that because you don't want to be spoiled, so I'm not explaining that fully, but I've talked enough. You can talk to Alec now.
All right. All right, Kristen gave Alec, you have the torch. Just go on.
He has the star wand.
It's the star wand.
Star wand?
As in Survivor Borneo, we instead of the conch, we have the magic star wand that travels.
Yes, I will take your birthday star wand. No, I feel what it was with Ty. I don't understand why he brought. I feel that the whole him bringing up the super idol and making it seem like Julia was misinformed kind of made it for TV of why she did flip. But because nobody else seemed surprised by it except Julia. But when I listened to the Know-It-Alls cast, by the fact that Ty voted for Jason, it made it seem like Ty knew that Nick was going home, or that not one of the brains was going home and stuff. And so it's so he knew that Michelle and Julia had flipped, and that Julia and Michelle had flipped. Yeah, sorry, I repeated myself because I lost train of thought. But Julia and Michelle had flipped, and so he thought it was against Jason, obviously, and he was never informed that Nick was the new target. And so he knew. I feel that Ty has good enough relationships with everybody that they just want him there. Probably whether it's just to have somebody fun by and stuff. They don't know that he has an idol. The only ones that do are Scott and Jason now that are left in the game. And it's just and probably everybody now that he's mentioned it. But yeah, and it's just I feel that they're trying to throw as many talks about a super idol as possible, just so then we think that there's going to be a super idol. Because they did the same thing in the first Brains Bond versus in Kaoh, because there was the talk about the big super idol. Tony found it, and he had talked about it in confessionals a couple times, but he never had to use it. It's he never used it. And so I feel that's kind of what they're doing here. And it just was brought up at Tribal, him talking about that was put in Tribal Council, number one, to make another reference for the super idol, because it's a big twist on this season. And number two, because it gave a reason why Julia and Michelle would flip. Although they probably already flipped before Tribal Council. But I feel that's the main reason why it was brought up, and it might be Scott and Jason, maybe we can't trust Ty now because he revealed that information, like Kristen was talking about, maybe previews, And so yeah, that's the reason why I think it was brought up, because I think Ty went into Tribal Council knowing that, at least in his mind, Jason was going home. And he knew that one of the brains wasn't going home, and so him bringing up the super idol, I don't know why he did, but the reason why I was put in the episode was for all those reasons.
The thing with Ty, bringing it up, I feel like it wasn't as big maybe of a mistake as we talk about, just because I do agree that I think a lot of people probably already knew about the super idol. You knew that Scott and Jason knew about it, Nick knew about it, Ty knows about it, obviously. There's a chance that Neil probably told Aubrey, that wouldn't surprise me. So in the end, you might only have 3 people who didn't know about it out of the 10 people left or so. So even though it was made a big deal of Julia's reaction and her not knowing, I think maybe the majority of the people there already knew about it. So I don't know if it's going to really hurt Ty or not. I don't know. I think Ty's an interesting character because it's hard to tell what his strategy is in the game, and I find that interesting to watch. In the same way, I don't think he's as strategically inept as somebody like Keith, but it's interesting to see these people who maybe have a different way of playing the game and you're not sure what their strategy is and they're kind of working it out on the run. I think that's what I find really interesting about watching Ty play the game, is that it feels like he's kind of playing week to week and figuring things out and changing things up, and is not kind of sure on what his end goal is. So I think that makes him a really fascinating character.
Well, I guess one thing that comes up in thinking about Ty talking about the idol is we only got the confessional or the talk about combining the idols from Scott, because he was the only one who knew about having two idols in existence. I mean, it is present on the clue, but what do you think prompted Ty? Like, I don't know what. I guess I don't even understand why he prompted to even mention it as a super idol, because that's more. I don't know. Is Ty a fan? Do you guys think?
Oh yeah, Ty's a fan.
Then why would he do that?
He knew the idols were planted, and he knew of possible places where they would be planted. Obviously, he first started with the worst spots ever, like these brand new trees. But yeah, I just feel he was possibly playing up the cockiness role. So then, when in his mind Jason went home, they didn't think that he was a part of it. That's the only thing I can think of. Is but why he would bring it up, I still don't know. Because Scott's the only one. Well, Scott and Jason now both know that about they both know about what the two idols in the game are and the combining and stuff. And it's just but it was mentioned maybe Neil told Aubrey, and Scott and Jason might have told Nick. Or Scott might have told Nick, because Scott's the one who also blabbed what Ty's idol was. And it's just and then maybe got around to Sydney. Or Sydney knew from Alicia. Sorry, I know she's your picture of Aussie, and I can't even say her name right. It's just and so it made sense that Julia and Michelle were probably the only ones that didn't know about that. Debbie and Joe, they probably just heard through the grapevine, or they just weren't. Maybe they were shocked and they just didn't show as much emotion about it. Debbie played off of it, which I think was her playing up the "I'm going home, so I'm trying to save my life" thing. And so it's just I feel Ty thought that there was no harm in saying something like that, because Jeff asked the theme, "Did they talk about idols?" Well, of course there's talk about idols, because we're in season 32, and of course there's going to be freaking idols around. But and so it's I just think he thought there was no harm in bringing it up, and it turned out there was. So
I just find it strange that a big fan of the show would probably commit a big blunder of keeping information that's really private so close, that you should keep close, kind of like who has an idol, what the idol can do, and kind of that really key information, and exposing it, I think, is just a bad idea in general, unless it's to a really close alliance member. I think it's a bad idea. Mm-hmm. Then again, it could be preference play. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think judging by his reaction, that it did seem like a genuine mistake, and I think maybe that's even in part due to, I suppose, having individual immunity. It kind of lifts that burden of maybe being so focused at tribal council, and just with the insurance that you're not the one going home, maybe you're more likely to slip up in a way because you let your guard down a bit. So to me, it felt I don't think it was a planned move to say that about it. I do think that it was just a genuine mistake, but has been mentioned, I feel knowledge of the super idol was probably more widely known than they've shown in the edit.
True. Any thoughts, Kristen, or are you good?
I was just going to add that I think that Ty is kind of different than some of these other people, where if Jason would have done what Ty did, it might have had a different effect. But Ty's Ty, and they kind of, I think he's just viewed as this cute little honest, I feel like he's so honest and nobody takes it negatively. I think I listened to plenty of the podcasts last week across various networks and stuff, and I didn't see anybody saying anything about when Debbie was like, yeah, this is our alliance right here. You're in our alliance. You got it. And he was like, I don't know if I am comfortable with that. Like, when people deny an alliance or decline an invitation to an alliance to the person, usually it's like the biggest blunder you can make in Survivor. Like, you're supposed to say yes to everyone and everything. No? I was surprised that no one talked about that. Okay,
I think,
never mind.
No, I completely agree with you. I think it's weird that Ty did that, but I think it was more trying to get at Debbie being inept about how to do things than Ty negating an alliance, because he was in a good position with Scott, Jason, Sydney, Julia, kind of that forming of a group, then that he didn't really need to join them.
Yeah, I get that. I just think it's like it's Ty, and no one thinks like he's just such like a nice guy that it's harder for him to piss people off or for people to criticize him. And I know he's like the quote unquote casual favorite. Actually, he's the only people that casual people viewers like, apparently, and they all hate the season. Casual people.
So the formal people like
the formal people like Jason.
Okay. And the casual people like, okay, good to know.
Leave me alone.
No.
They all hate this season, though. Can we talk about that for a sec? Do we all like this season? I just need to like check in on this.
Alec?
Anyone?
I feel this season is definitely in the upper tier. I would probably put it similar to Cambodia, the second chance one. It was like, it's a great season so far. Like, depends on how it finishes out up to this point. So it's like, I think pre-merge for sure it was like a top season. It's like, so far post-merge it hasn't been like the greatest season, but it's still been like a really good season, you know? So I'm liking it. Like, it's definitely a good one to follow an all-returning season. It's not like a Nicaragua or a, you know, I can't remember the other.
Don't you dare say negative things about Vanuatu.
I wasn't gonna say.
Have my wand.
I was trying to think of the other ones. Like,
you don't get the wand.
Like Gabon was a good one. Yeah, it wasn't a Nicaragua or like a. Yeah, I can't think of anything else.
Jared,
it wasn't. It's not a Nicaragua. I'll put it that way.
Jared, go. What do you think?
I love this season. I think that it feels really fresh and new and different. I had like my problems with last season in that I found it hard to find somebody who I was going for and wanting to win. Like, I just didn't have that investment in the characters. But this season, there's so many people who I like and people who I hate, and there's that conflict. And I think everybody, they are showing in like shades of grey that people are having their great moments and these horrible moments as well. And I just think that it's a really unique season, and I love it.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with Jared. I honestly, at this stage in the game, even though the merge has not been spectacular and the best ever, it's honestly in the top 5 for me at this stage, which is really bold to say. But then again,
I'd probably say top 10 at this point. Maybe.
Yeah,
like
I can't. I can't even like rank this season yet, obviously, because it's not over, but I'm just really surprised to see the negativity about it. I don't know if anybody else ever ventures into the swamp dirtiness that is the Survivor Facebook page. That is like middle-aged women like live Facebook posting the episode. But like the consensus is really that this is like one of the worst seasons. Ty is the only person to root for. Debbie is the worst human ever. I'm like so confused.
Debbie out of all people on the season. To say
I mean, they also talk badly about Jason and Scott, but like, there's so many people there that hate Debbie, and I'm so confused. Like, I know that there's always some sort of difference between the like quote unquote super fans and the quote unquote casuals, but this just seems way more drastic to me than normal. So from most of the podcasts I've listened to, it seems like everyone's into this season. And so I'm kind of curious what the show does about like how they can please both sides of this, because I was shocked to see that how many people were upset about how terrible the season was.
I
Probably
feel
just
that
bring back Rupert for next season.
yeah. No, I feel what this is this will be one of those seasons that like us Ozlets rate in the top 10, and the poll will probably rank in like 17th or 18th come Ozka's time. Like that's probably what it will be. Is like it's not going to be like a Kagayan where it's like general consensus it's a great season, but it's going to be one that us as super fans really like, but the casual fans probably won't view as well, because especially if somebody like and Aubrey, if Debbie wins, they will probably say it's the worst season ever, even worse than Redemption Island. I think is like BS. Even my dad, who's not like more of a closer to the casual fan, like hated Redemption Island. So
no, I get that. It's so weird to me. I'm so confused.
Yeah,
I think this is a great season. I mean, I'm clearly one of those people that you can tell I'm not like, hey, I'm never watching Survivor again or whatever, but like I will ditch out on a season. Like I've made that clear. I'm not one of those people. There's people that are like, oh, I'm never watching Survivor again. Like when I say I'm not watching the season, I don't watch the damn season. And I've not watched a lot in the last couple of years, and this is actually holding my interest, and everyone's saying how boring it is, and they also like challenges though, so they have no taste.
I feel this is definitely the best season since Kagayan, and probably the second best season, arguably the second best season since Heroes vs. Villains. Because a lot of people will probably say Blood vs. Water as well, the first one, and it's just like we don't have that defining character that's like shoved down our throats that's playing a great game, and so I feel that's why. And Ty was the character that was shoved down our throats, and so that's probably the reason why the casual fans liked him, because he is lovable. Like I love Ty, but like if Ty were to win, it'd kind of be one of those like WTF moments, like a Fabio.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen, so it's okay.
Exactly, I don't think it will either, but yeah, I think it's a great season. Definitely one of the better ones in a while. So
yeah, I guess before we wrap up, I do have an idea for a game.
Yay!
The hashtag game.
No, it's not a hashtag game, even though Kristen's already too eager to do hashtagging with hashtag topics. Get it trending, everyone trend hashtag topics. But I'm curious to see if we get a ranking of the contestants based on your personal like. I want to see if everyone can do that. Kristen, are you willing to do that?
Dang.
Yeah, that was this. I don't even know who's on the show. This is going to take me a second.
You got 9 people to go through.
We're at the final 9, Kristen.
Survivor, Kaoh, Rong,
Do you want me to
Vicky.
start?
Yes, please.
Okay, number 1 has always been, and probably will always be for the rest of the season, Debbie, because what's not to like. 2, it's probably Sydney. 3, Ty. 4, Michelle. 5, Aubrey. 6, Scott. 7, Jason. 8, Joe, and 9, Julia.
Okay.
Alex?
I would probably say, dang, this is decently. I would probably say 1 is Sydney. 2 Aubrey. 3 Jason, just because I love his character. Do I think he'll win? No, but I love Jason's character. 4 Ty. 5 Scott. 6 Michelle. 7 Debbie. I'm not saying I don't like Debbie. I just totally forgot to rank her until just then. But 8 Julia. 9 Joe. I just feel Joe's confessionals are kind of one-dimensional so far, just so then they can give him airtime. I love Joe. Like I would totally put Joe as number 1 if he was getting a Debbie edit, but he's not. So,
Kristen, do you have yours, or should I go ahead to give you time?
I got it. All
right, go.
1 Michelle, 2 Sydney, 3 Aubrey, 4 Julia, 5 Debbie, 6 Ty, 7 Joe, 8 Scott, 9 Jason.
Wow.
Bam.
We are incredibly similar, Kristen.
That's because I like women this season. That came out amazingly.
Okay.
Kristen likes women, everyone.
I'm glad to know I know your new interest in life, women.
It's a birthday present.
I'd take Michelle as my birthday present. I won't argue with that.
She was a beauty after all, so.
What are you doing here, Colin? That is not the correct answer. Bye.
Oh my
3
God.
Joe? Are you fucking
I'm
insane?
gonna throw up at that answer.
Okay.
All right, just for the
Colin
record,
is not here. Rossi, move on.
Colin in the comments says 1 Sydney, 2 Debbie, 3 Joe, 4 Ty, 5 Scott, 6 Aubrey, 7 Michelle, 8 Jason, and 9 Julia. That is disgusting, Colin. You are not a Survivor fan. I'm going to do my rankings to shut you down because that was disgusting. Number 1 is Michelle. Number 2 is Aubrey. Number 3 is Sydney. Number 4, Ty. 5 is Julia. 6 is Debbie. 7 is Joe. 8 is Scott. And 9 is Jason.
I can get with that.
And Chris and I are really similar, just mixing around some of the beauties in there. But
I'm like the only one that had like Scott or Jason in like my top 5.
Because you're a terrible human.
You obviously
he said
did not
my
like
personal preference, and I enjoy them as characters. And that's
They're
the reason
not
why
characters. They're terrible players and
bitches.
gross.
they are,
They're
but like
disgusting.
so was Abby Marie, and everybody loves her as a character of the show.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's no Jason.
she actually has good moments to her.
Hey, Jason has a child that has autism.
Wow,
Okay.
a daughter. Wow.
He has a daughter with autism and can't play a social game. Like you'd think he'd have patience.
Still has no respectable human qualities, but has a
Jason has
daughter.
at least showed composure. Like he didn't blow up at Alicia when Scott
He also
did.
tackled her for the idol clue. Really a respectable human being.
Yeah, Nayanka did that too. So
Yeah, because Nayanka's a fan favorite for being a good human.
I hate Nayanka.
You're using really good examples here, just helping our argument. Okay,
Yeah.
I think we should end it. We're on Nayanka. We're a few seasons off here. Anyway, I'm just going to end it because I have nothing else to say. Except for thank you, Kristen, and your dirty mouth, keeping it very interesting.
Thank you for having me and my magic birthday wand here in this. Never mind. I'm just going to go to bed.
It's good to have you not in the dungeon for once as well.
Yay!
Thank you, Alec, the Jenny #1 fan club member. Thanks for being here.
I was a Jenny #1 fan. No, it's good to be here. I'm sorry that Kristen and I totally had like great discussions on disagreements. But you know, if you want to listen to more of me and Kristen like disagreeing on stuff, or even agreeing on stuff, just go listen to the Amazing Race Oz. Like we do that a lot on that.
Does the Amazing Race Oz exist?
Yeah, this season they just did the mid-season.
I was making a joke.
Oh, ouch.
Go back and listen to
last. Just as much as
Go
Double
back
Oz.
and listen to last season. Was that last season? Never
Listen
mind.
to every
Cut
season.
all of this out,
Record it.
Colin. All of this. Cut all of this. The whole thing. Cut the whole thing.
Okay, Kristen, shut
We did a
up.
whole Oz stuff.
Shut your dirty mouth, Kristen. Let us finish.
Stop using that against me.
It's your own fault. Anyway, actually, before
Yeah,
I say
Alicia #1 fan. Okay.
anyway, shut up. He's great.
Russ
outta
is a
here.
terrible host. He can't take control of his own show.
Okay, can I mute you? I can't even kick you
See,
from the
he's
call.
stuttering. He's stuttering. He's stuttering.
Damn it. Okay.
Anyways.
Before I
Take
say goodbye to
control,
Jared,
Rossi.
before I say goodbye to Jared, I have to mention because Colin's gonna yell at me if I don't. Fan of the week, whatever. Fan club member can join in. Just message the Survivor Oz Facebook page or the Twitter or I don't know, LinkedIn. Do we have a LinkedIn? If not, don't message that.
Just tweet me and I'll ignore you and it'll be good.
Okay,
That was
don't
just
tweet
directed
Kristen.
straight at you, Rossi, okay? Like,
Yep.
she doesn't care about the fan of the week. She just cared about you.
All right, message our MySpace page. Whatever you need to do to get
Friendster.
on.
Zanga.
Yeah, Pinterest. Carrier pigeon as well would work well if you can get it to Australia. We do take Instagram posts. Any DMs, if you DM us, we'll let you know.
Slide on in there.
If you slide into our DMs, we'll accept anyone.
Oh yeah, Snapchat me and I'll get you on the show.
Use a good filter, though. Don't use an unflattering filter.
Choice of filter is very important.
Yeah. Anyway, Jared.
Take control.
Jared, thank you for being here, for surviving a nap to be here.
No problem. It's great to feel included.
And all right, this episode's over. It's a fucking mess, but we hope you enjoyed it.
This is my favorite episode we've ever done.
Thanks for being here, everyone, and see you on the next fucking shit.